and welcome back to Inside Value with me, Siam Dengi. It's great to have you here. This episode is our first installment of Value in Practice, where we invite a guest to speak about their understanding of value in their area of expertise. And today we've got Mercury Duma as our guest. Mercury is the founder and managing director of the Duma Literacy Foundation, or DLF. DLF was formulated in 2020. Together with amazing volunteers, they help children from grades 1 to 9 with language skills and basic mathematics skills. And to date, more than 30 children are currently having their learning skills sharpened and are being actively guided for future prospects for their learning skills and development. Mercury is also a board member of an international youth-led organization called the Youth Coalition, which focuses on sexual and reproductive health rights, SRHR, body autonomy, and meaningful youth engagement. In addition to this work, he has also undertaken toolkit development, digital activism, and facilitation on the international stage in collaboration with many other youth-led organizations. His biggest call to purpose, collaboration with various organizations for the betterment of children's learning skills, and spending his days being a kind individual, spreading positive vibes through his spiritual growth. Thank you for joining Inside Value, Mercury.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. Been looking forward to this conversation for a while now. It's so good to be here.
Wonderful. All right, so let's start off with your origin story. How did you come to realize that these learning skills were sorely lacking amongst the children in your community?
It was during COVID. It's so funny because this was during COVID. And kids were just lying around and no one was paying much attention to the children. So, like a human being that I am, I asked them to read for me, wanted to hear how their reading was, their writing, how their writing was, because no one was paying attention to them. We were concerned about the fact that we might be dying at any moment as a country. And I was concerned about the kids. So I started working with them, started hanging out with them per se first and being their friend. And I'll bring some couple of books to them for them to read for me. And I realized that they couldn't read. And it was sad for me that the kids around me can't even read a full sentence without making a wrong pronunciation of the sentence or actually understanding what the sentence means. So for me, it hits home. I was like, and the kids were sitting around at the time.
Cool. So you described having grabbed some books and, gone to the kids directly in your community. So my follow-up question actually is, you partially answered the follow-up question, which is how did you start it? But did you start, for example, in your immediate community, or was there a specific community that you started out with?
I've been on a roller coaster for a while that I literally had a moment where I had to reflect, and thank God I'm reflecting now. And to go back to your question, I started with my immediate community, but the community was not really paying much attention to it until the kids went back to school. So wasn't a gap for me to actually get into it at that point. There was no need for the reading and writing sessions. It was not important. The most important thing at that time was people were sick, dying, and everything that was happening around us. So for me, working with my immediate community, which were the kids that were around me at that time, because remember, the movement was also restricted. We couldn't just get into spaces as much as we wanted. So the kids that were around me, those were the kids that I started with. And it was not only the children, but also the older people. I will give older people some books to read, go deliver it in your home, and then take it back. If you don't want to give me my book, I'll tell your mom, and then your mom will have to do something about you so that you can receive, like, because books for me, they mean so much more than anything. And then working with the children at that time, it wasn't something intentional. It was just me helping the kids. at that point. It wasn't like, oh my God, I'm going to make so much money out of this. Oh my God, I'm going to be so into this. But it was more like, it's COVID times. Don't have much to do. Right? Might as well just help the kids, because I think I've always been passionate about helping children with their reading and writing, but I've never had the opportunity, and COVID handed the opportunity to me.
Okay, that's really, really noble work to have done in a time where everybody was in crisis mode, as you have described. So my next question is, can you tell us a little bit about what you're most responsible for in your role as the managing director of Duma Literacy Foundation?
I'm breathing because this title, they make us look so cool. Like the titles make it look as if everything is just in line and when you're in tune with everything. I think I'll just go back before answering the question. I'll go back a little bit. When I started, I was alone, right? I was alone. So that means that I kind of hold the vision together. I hold the vision together of what I'm doing. So when I started, it was when I really, really started getting into it. It was about just helping the kids, seeing if I can try and make some money out of it, and then going back home. Right? It's like no strings attached, nothing attached, no paperwork involved, no interviews, no social media. It was just me, the child, the parent, and then that's it. Right. But then during the course of everything, I think it's funny how the Duma Literacy Foundation has grown, because we have literally grown with the digital age of social media. So I kind of realized that if I'm gonna do this fully and effectively and completely, I need a team. Right. And in meeting the team, I need the right people. But my worry is I don't have the money for the right people. So I'm
Which
kind of left
yeah,
with
which kind of comes on its own, but at this point you're kind of left like, oh, okay, my job is everything and nothing at this point.
exactly. And it's like, so how am I finding these people? And we can't afford them, but I need them. So through the work that I do, one of the most important things that has made me now embrace the title managing director, because I've never seen myself as a managing director. Hell, I've never even thought about what this title is about until recently, when I've started being comfortable with this title sometime last year, late last year. Yeah. Now we're managing, we are directing, we are seeing how things are done, because there's a team now, which is a team of volunteers. So with the growth of the Duma Literacy Foundation has come with different spaces being created for other people to tap into.
All right.
Yeah, but for me, being a managing director, it kind of means that I do everything, but at the same time, I stop myself from doing everything because now there's relevant people. But almost every day, I make sure that everyone kind of knows what they need to do. If there are things that need to be followed on, we follow on those things, confirm few meetings, make sure that the parents are still with us, make sure that the kids are still with us, ensure that this potential stakeholders we are approaching, they're approachable, run around meetings if I have to, but generally we are in a good space because now I'm really just getting into the field of managing people, and it's pleasant because everyone just knows the role they need to play.
Cool. All right. So that effectively sets our context quite nicely. And it's very good. It's very interesting that you mentioned the team, and we're going to circle back a little bit on that in a moment. But before we even get there, and before we can even really start talking about how it is that the Duma Literacy Foundation creates value, and before we can even start about talking about value creation, we need to first understand your value definition and your value context, which is something that I'd mentioned in previous episodes. So if you were to describe the value that the Duma Literacy Foundation delivers to its stakeholders, so that's the kids, the parents, your volunteers, prospective donors, etc., what would you say that value is?
I'm taking my time because it's in different layers for me. But the value that we are creating and that we have created has essentially been the importance of education. The importance of education, the importance of reading and writing, the importance of why your child should do well, why your child can do well, and why your child could do well if they know how to read, if they know how to write, speak, and listen, because the language development is very important for the children, along with the counting skills, of course. So our value creation has been largely about, first of all, making people aware of the fact that there's nothing wrong with the kids. They just need a little bit more in terms of the learning skills development. And then the kids need you, the parents, the sister, the brother, to help them with homework effectively and not write their answers. And then do the active reading, listening activities with them so that they can continue developing their skills. And essentially, it's a team effort. Yes. Bring the team efforts element in our value creation and inspiring the kids while at it, and helping also the parents seeing the value of why it's important for their children to be part of the organization. Because we have worked with children since 2020, and we still have those kids within the program, and much of them, they're in high school now, which is interesting. So for us, the value has been about the importance of education, but breaking it down into different layers, because every child is different from another child, and figuring out what needs to be done together with the parents, the school, the teacher, ourselves, our advisors also, and then moving from that to a point where now the parent can literally see the child improving their schoolwork, and then doing more effective ways to making sure that we are building on this child educational journey. So basically, it's a group project. We can all see, we can all touch, we can all feel, and we can all add value on.
Oh, that's brilliant. That is such a wonderful, holistic value statement. And the one thing that pops out to me is that there are so many people who are involved in the creation of this value. And there's so many stakeholders that you kind of have to engage with, as the Duma Literacy Foundation, as we mentioned, of course, the kids, the parents, the schools, the libraries. And as one might imagine, having all of these stakeholders to consider in your value definition kind of brings a level of complexity to it, because you have to consider their value needs. For example, the parents are going to say, oh, I'm cost sensitive, or I'm time sensitive. The kids are going to say, I want things to be engaging and fun. The schools are going to say, we have a syllabus. So how did you and how do you take into account all of these value needs, and how did you come to eventually settle on saying that this is the value that we're delivering, and having taken all of everyone's needs into account?
For me, it has always been about the essence of why we exist, right? We can have everyone joining in, stakeholders, everyone being part of it, looking all cute, but what do we stand for? And we stand for helping children read and write, right? Helping children become better in their learning skills development. If a child cannot read, they can't do well. If they can't write, they can't do well. If they can't count, they can't do well. If they can't speak, they can't do well. Okay, cool. So with all these different stakeholders that are coming on board, or that we have, we will have to create programs with them that will help the children within the organization get better. because it's useless to have stakeholders, lots of them, but not having an impact that is needed by the stakeholders towards the organization in delivering their value. I'll
Mm-hmm.
make an example for you. Um, much of the children that we work with, they struggle with reading and writing a lot. And with the struggles of reading and writing, we look into going to their schools. We go to their schools, speak to the teachers. How can we help the child get better from your perspective? Because the teacher is the expert at this point, because they spend much of their time in the school. And then from there, we go to the library,
Mm-hmm.
create library cards for the child so that the child can come back and be able to read these books that have been recommended by the teacher. If
Mm-hmm.
these books are not in the library, we go and buy them together with the parent because it's a team effort. So the stakeholders that we work with, they need to understand our vision and our mission first, look into the programs or the projects that they have going on, align ourselves with those projects if they are in tune with ours. Because for us, it's about learning development. If we are
Mm-hmm.
not touching on either that, then there's no need for us to actually exist with the stakeholders. Then we are able to see who is for the project and who is not for the project. So
Mm-hmm.
in this way, we do not waste each other's time, and we ensure that the children literally are the beneficiaries of whatever that we are bringing out. So that makes us easier to be identified and seen as a space in which children grow in, because we are looking intentionally at their learning skills development. That's it.
And actually, that's a wonderful way to approach your stakeholders and making sure that, you're at the end of the day, you're not getting dragged off of your own value
Mm.
statement, your own value offering by your stakeholders, which sometimes tends to happen. You're trying to keep everyone happy. You kind of almost
Yep.
forget, hey, there's a value statement that we have, there's a value offering that we
Mm.
have. It was specific.
And
So
it's sad. Yeah. Mm.
yeah. So that deals with the stakeholders themselves. So then how have you gotten your team and any incoming volunteers up to speed with what the DLF's value offering is? You've described quite in detail how it is that you manage the stakeholders. So how do you
Mm.
manage your internal stakeholders, which is your team and your incoming volunteers?
That has been one of the easiest things to do.
Aha.
Ironically, that's been the easiest things to do, because for me, I've always thought and I've always known that if I get this right, I'll get the right people. And I've
Mm.
been getting the right people. So how are we getting them right? How are we getting the right volunteers? I'm a person that is very much spiritually aligned. I work a lot on my alignment. I'm a person that is very much in touch with who I am and what do I do and what do I bring to the table. So that makes it easier for people to approach me, and that makes it easier for people to be drawn to what I'm doing. Because when I started alone.
Mhm.
But at this point, we have more than 25 volunteers or more. How we have done that is by being honest with everyone about what we're doing, first of all. And two, being in touch with each person that stays there volunteer. Get to know the person. They are giving you their time, so you might as well just get to know them. It's not only about you volunteering, we also care about you. The Duma Literacy Foundation space is very progressive, and it's one space where you tap into, you guarantee that you're going to grow. People want to contribute where they see growth, and people see growth in the Duma Literacy Foundation. And
Mhm.
much of our principles as the organization and growing the volunteers and everyone else in it is that we engage with you.
Okay, so it sounds like there's a very like holistic involvement in getting everybody to grips with the value offering, but in
Yes.
itself, Duma Literacy Foundation has a value offering that it offers to its volunteers and its team, which is very
Mm.
interesting and actually really, really cool. So we'll circle back a little bit more on the value offering aspect of it in a moment. But
Yes.
first, you had mentioned, I'd mentioned rather in your intro that you developed toolkits. So go ahead and tell us a little
Mm.
bit more about these toolkits. What are they? Who are they for? That kind of stuff.
Last year, I developed the funding and fundraising toolkit for the Duma Literacy Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
The most funniest thing ever about the toolkit is that what I have set out to be a basis for the toolkit didn't make sense on the ground. Look for funding, apply for funding, approach different stakeholders for money. That didn't work. Like that didn't work. I'm not saying it's not working, but for me and for the organization, it didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
So what did I find? That should be your question. What did I find out? What I found out is that maybe I don't need funding, I just need resources. Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we don't need funding, maybe we need resources at this point. So from the funding and fundraising toolkits, the main idea now is the resources. How are we getting the resources? The resources are important. Um, they're important, yes, but money is also important, you might argue. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to create streams within the organizations that are going to give us the money, right?
Right.
And within those streams, if we can't get the money, we need to get the resources. Fair, fair trade.
Mm-hmm.
So we have looked into being a resource based organization also. We are
Mm-hmm.
moving into that a lot. Rather than being a funded organization, we're looking at being a resourceful organization because funding runs out eventually. So by being a resourceful organization means that we're going to need to have skills that are going to make sure that the organization keeps going, regardless of whether we are making money or not making money at that
Mm-hmm.
point. Because the toolkit is just there. It's a kit. It's there to help you figure out what needs to be figured. Like how we have figured out that funding is currently 5% chances in South Africa currently with the state of economy. So we need to be a resourceful organization. And by being a resourceful organization, we can have skills that we can offer to other organizations or businesses that they can pay us for, right?
Right.
And these, yes, and with these services that we are skillful on, we can take the money that we get here and put it back to the organization, and now developing our own funding service toolkit, if you may put it like that. So for me and the organization and the toolkit, it's about looking at what is working at this current moment in South Africa, and then also looking at what is not working and what is working for us so well within our funding and fundraising toolkits is the mere fact that we are resourceful.
That's actually very interesting because then now what you've effectively described, well, to me as a value strategist, is yet another way that the Duma Literacy Foundation has created value, having a spread of services that go beyond or outside the service offering that the foundation itself offers, which is children's literacy. But now the foundation has allied services or connected services that they can offer that sort of work as a fundraising generation engine or a funds generation engine, which ultimately makes you look quite attractive to, prospective donors, to prospective partners, because it shows a level of independence. And I find that quite interesting. Now to circle back on DLF's value offering, Your specific target market is kids and subsequently their parents who live in peri-urban and rural communities and are naturally
Yes.
on the lower end of the income scale. So as we might
Mm.
see, as we might imagine, after school tutoring is not always an accessible it's not always as accessible as a priority to them. So how have you been able to communicate the value of your offering and formulate an accessible value offering to a cost-sensitive group of individuals?
Ooh. People don't have money generally.
Right.
Generally, people don't have money. And because the work that I do is not taken seriously, so we need to make it look serious, first of all. We need to create a sense of agency. That's the second thing, right? Like we need you to know that if your child is not gonna do well, you're not gonna rest. Because when you look at much of the things that there has been a lot of what is this? There's been a lot of agency around them. Those things were also created to have agency around them. Make an example for you, data, right? Some people take data as an essential thing to have. Some people don't really take it as something that is very essential to have. So it's about knowing who to speak to. That's number one. And then also we have something called social media nowadays, and everyone is on their phones. So with everyone on their phones, that's for us become our playground. How we are able to interact with different people through our social media pages, but also we interact with the people that are in our age group first, right? Much of the time. So I'm always in the street. That's another thing about me. I interact with the people on the ground. I'm not somewhere with the chair in the office and saying, "Hey, do this." No, 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 no. I'm on the ground. Someone yesterday sent me a text and said, "I've never seen a managing director that is always on the ground." I'm like, "Eh? Can't do what do managing directors do?" So I'm always on the ground because that's where I get to understand what is important, what is not important, and I've made it so important for the children to be able to read and write because we constantly speak about it and we are constantly producing great results, right? And we are working with children from grade R to grade 9, and our best achieving learner was in grade 1 last year with the 94% average learner. You
Wow.
see, just get the schools in the program. just get the schools, just get your child into our foundation projects so that your child can start doing so much better. So we have children that's when we speak about people can see. It's like, oh my God, that's child. And what's so funny here is that it start being a chain, right? We create a chain. We no longer make too much noise now online. I used to make so much noise, especially in 2021. Hey, does your child need homework? Needs homework to be done or any of those things. 2023, like we are even more quieter now. Why? Because we understand how parents work now. So Sia's mom will help Sia with homework, right? We'll help Sia with homework and Sia will start doing so much better in school. And then the first term will end, and then Sia's mom will tell her aunts about Mercury or Mercury's or DLF, and then someone will call me and say, "Hey, can you help us with this?" You see, it becomes a chain because also difference of the work that we're producing is quality. We are not taking chances here. We are making sure that we deliver up to our best standards. We create value because remember, once you create value of something, then it becomes easier for people actually to be drawn to it. They will know that guaranteed, I'm not going to be wasting my time with doing that. Rather, I'll be investing in whatever.
Let's now take a zoomed out view of nonprofits in general and value creation. From the work that you've done with the organizations that you've done it with, what are some of the biggest opportunities that you see on the horizon for emerging nonprofits specifically?
Ooh, comprehensive sexual education. That's the first one. I don't see a lot of organizations touching on that. I don't see a lot of organizations touching on that, especially here in South Africa. Also meaningful youth engagements. I think that one can be worked around on. There's a huge, because like South Africa is a country that has leaders that are questionable currently, right? So our leadership structures everywhere, it's just questionable. So if there's an organization that can bring that back, like how they were doing it, the Nelson Mandelas, Oliver Tambo's, those veterans, man, the struggle veterans. I feel as if there's a need for that to come back, because much of us, we don't really believe in leadership now and all of that. So there's a need for that to come back. And then also skills, yeah, skill. Organizations, they need to offer, they need to be a skill-centered organization, whether it's in paid work, whether it's in, I don't know, arts, fine arts or anything. But there's a huge market for skill, all type of skills. If an organization can focus on one skill, build on it, certainly then that organization will be destined for greater things, because they will focus on something that no one is looking at, because we're all looking for skills, but no one is creating a skill-centered organization.
All right. And then in terms of value creation specifically, what advice would you give to smaller nonprofits or nonprofits that are just getting their footing right now in terms of creating value?
Speak to value creators, experts. We don't know it all. We don't know it. We need the other person to speak for us, right? Like we need someone to speak for us. I'm not very good in the terminology that you have. I'm not very good in speaking the language that you speak, but I'm very good in articulating the language that you speak. Right.
Right.
So there needs to be balance. There needs to be balance, because also what you find about people that create organization is that they're passionate, man. They're passionate about something. They have this fire. But we need people like yourself that can contain the fire for us and say, listen, you're gonna burn yourself if you go there. Here's a workbook, go through it, tell me what you think. When you're ready to have a conversation, let's go. So that's something that the people really need to tap on, especially those that want to tap into NPO spaces and those that are already within the NPO spaces or the NGO spaces. Because with the Duma Literacy Foundation, what we have been saying and what I'll continue saying is that we don't want to run the organization like how every other organization has been run. We want to be different. We want to be innovative. We want to be new. We want to be fresh. We want to sound like a corporate firm somewhere, right? And then you're like, what? It's a whole NGO or a whole NPO. Because remember, NGOs and NPOs have been looked at as 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 organizations that are needed to save the community. So now we want to step more into that, look beyond that, and look beyond that what you have been told about NPOs and NGOs, and start putting or start having the relevant right people within your corner to help you actually make the organization run. Look for a finance person. If you can pay them, make a deal with your friend, help them with whatever that they are working on so that they can also help you, right? Look for social media managers. Like literally negotiate your way around in order for you to get what you need. Because if you don't, then you run a risk of not growing the organization because you're all alone. There's nothing hard than being alone when you're doing something because everything is looking at you.
Oh, that was incredibly wonderful advice. And I'm absolutely certain that anybody who is, starting out an NPO or is within the NPO space would find those insights really useful in supporting them run their enterprises. So, all right, now we are closing. We've got two rapid fire questions now because one of them was pulled forward. The first one, what single podcast or video or book or article, just one, have you listened to or read that shifted or changed your perspective on the work that you do?
It's by Simon, it's by Simon Sinek. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right. How to build trust with people around you.
Ah,
Okay.
all right. And then for closing remarks, do you have any closing remarks, any last things that you want to mention before we close the episode? And also, where can people find you and the Duma Literacy Foundation on the internet?
Just be a good person. Just be a good person. Try to be a very kind person. Try to be a person that really, really goes all out to help the other person. In this day and age, you kind of need that. And then closing remarks from us. Please follow us on Instagram or Facebook, Duma Literacy Foundation. Our marketing team will be so happy. Duma Literacy Foundation on Facebook, Instagram, Duma _literacy_foundation_. And then you can catch me on Facebook or Instagram on Mercury Duma. And then if you would like to get in touch with us, just drop us a DM on Instagram. And we're looking for collaborations, looking to work with more young people in Africa and also the rest of the world. Yabong.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mercury, for your incredible insights. It was so fantastic having you here, and I'm incredibly honored to have spoken with someone with such a vested interest in developing the young, growing minds of South Africa.
No, it's my pleasure, Sia. Thank you for the conversation. Very, very much insightful also. You got me thinking a lot there. Yabong.
Wonderful. And that does it for this episode. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to give it a like and subscribe to Insight Value on your preferred podcast platform. Be sure to follow Vive Consulting on LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube, and visit our website on vive.co.za. That's VIVRE.co.za for more insights on value creation, value innovation, and value strategy. This has been Inside Value with me, Siam Dingi. See you in the next one.